Why Apple, Samsung, and Google need each other. You've seen the headlines: Apple versus Samsung, iPhone versus Galaxy, iOS versus Android. But what if I told you that behind all the rivalry, these tech giants are actually working together? Yes, you heard that right. The companies battling for your attention at the store are also quietly making each other billions behind the scenes. So why would fierce competitors team up in the background? And what would happen if one of them suddenly walked away from the deal? People in the tech world today often see competition as an all-or-nothing fight, a zero-sum game in which one company wins and another loses. The rivalry between Apple and Samsung is one of the best examples of this story. Their most expensive phones, the iPhone and the Galaxy S series, go up against each other for the same high-end users. There is a lot of bad blood between the companies, and it shows in the ads, court cases, and marketing efforts. But this isn't the whole story. Apple, Samsung, and Google are all involved in a lot more than just product competition and drama. They work together and rely on each other in a lot of ways. In some areas, these companies compete with each other, but in others, they are essential partners. Components, software, and services all depend on each other in ways that most customers don't even notice or think about. Figuring out why they work together, even though they compete, shows not only how the tech industry works, but also the surprising fact that they are often stronger when they work together than when they work alone. Apple and Samsung are rivals in public, but they work together behind the scenes. A lot of people know that Samsung is Apple's biggest smartphone rival. When Apple comes out with a new iPhone every year, Samsung is ready with a flashy Galaxy S or Fold line to match or beat it. The two brands get most of the attention in news stories and YouTube movies that compare their cameras, screens, and processors. It's simple to think that they're foes. But here's the catch. Samsung is one of Apple's most important providers. Display technology is a great example of this. The OLED screens in most iPhones, including the high-end iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro, are made by Samsung Display, which is a division of Samsung Electronics. People who use iPhones often admire Samsung's work when they are amazed by the bright colors and deep blacks on their screens. The fact that a competitor makes one of the most important parts of a competitor's main product is not a failure of capitalism. It's a lesson in how it works. While Apple could have gone with a different company, Samsung is the clear winner because it makes the best OLED screens. Samsung is the company that Apple should choose if it wants to ship tens of millions of phones with the best screens. What would happen if Samsung told Apple no? At first glance, it might look like a good move for Samsung. Apple would have to rush to find other options, which could mean that the quality of its iPhones drops or product releases are pushed back. Samsung could then make money by saying that the screens on its Galaxy phones are better than those on other phones. It's not that easy, though. Samsung made the beautiful OLED screen that came with the iPhone X when it came out in 2017. The Galaxy S8 from Samsung also came out that same year to good reviews. In terms of money made, though, Samsung made more from iPhone screens than from selling phones. That's how important the supply deal between Apple and Samsung is for their finances. This deal is good for both businesses. The screens on Apple's iPhones are the best in their class. Apple brings in billions of dollars for Samsung, which means that the company will always be profitable, even if Galaxy sales aren't steady. A world without Samsung? We all know that no relationship lasts forever. It looks like Apple is putting a lot of money into new display technologies, like micro-LED, which might help the company beat Samsung. Micro-LED screens are bright, efficient, and last a long time, and they don't use any biological materials that break down over time. If Apple gets better at making micro-LEDs, especially in-house, it could make Samsung Display less dominant. Because the iPhone wouldn't need Samsung's OLED tech, that could be very bad for Samsung's business making parts. When Apple made its own M-series chips for Macs, this is what happened to Intel. Apple got more say over its hardware plans, and Intel lost a big client that was worth a lot of money. But for now, the relationship between Apple and Samsung screens is still strong. The possible problems in the future are a reminder that someone who is an ally today could be an enemy tomorrow, but both sides stand to win too much for them to easily give up. Most people see Apple and Google as ideological and business rivals. Apple is proud of its privacy and how well its hardware and software work together. Google makes a lot of money from ads, open platforms, and data collection. In a strange twist, Apple's iPhones depend on Google's search engine a lot. This is one of the most important partnerships in the tech business. Since Google Search is the default search engine on your iPhone, every time you type a question into Safari, you're probably using it. A lot of people never change it. Because this setting is so useful, Google apparently pays Apple between $10 billion and $20 billion a year, or even more recently, up to $120 billion to stay the default search provider on iOS devices. This makes sense for each business. Apple gets a huge amount of almost passive income, which makes its already amazing financial performance even better. Google becomes the most popular search engine, making sure that millions or even billions of queries go through its system every day. This makes its ad-based income machine even stronger. Think about what would happen if that deal fell through. This is also true for Google and Samsung's relationship when it comes to Android smartphones. On the one hand, they clash. Google makes its own phones called Pixel that are meant to show off the best of Android. Most of the time, these phones get special features before anyone else, and they're Google's idea of the perfect phone experience. On the other hand, Samsung makes more Android phones than any other company. It has a much bigger market spread than Google's Pixel line. Samsung is the key to getting Google's services and apps seen by people all over the world. That's why Google and Samsung work together so closely, even though they are rivals. Samsung phones already have Google services like Search, YouTube, Gmail, Google Maps, and more. And in the past few years, Samsung and Google have worked together on deeper features, like making Android updates better and improving the user interface. One case that stands out is Google's Gemini AI, which is similar to OpenAI's ChatGPT. Gemini can be used by millions of people because Samsung built it into its Galaxy phones. In exchange, Google pays Samsung a lot of money to make sure that its services stay at the top of the list on Galaxy devices. In an interesting twist, Google usually releases new Android features on Samsung phones before it comes out on its own Pixels. Why? Samsung is the leader in the Android business. When Google wants to show off something new, it utilizes the phones that a lot of people buy. It makes sense to work together in this way. Google gets bigger and more well-known, and Samsung makes sure that its phones always have the best features and user experiences. They work together to make Android more appealing and able to compete with Apple's iOS. At first look, the ties between Apple, Samsung, and Google might not seem to go together. Why would Apple work with Samsung, which makes tech that Apple doesn't like? Why would Google work with Samsung when they have Pixel phones that they are trying to beat? Given that Apple is known for focusing on privacy, why would it back Google Search? The answer lies in how the tech world's economies work and how they depend on each other. These businesses don't work alone. Samsung's display tech, Google's data and AI, and Apple's environment and customer loyalty are all things that make each one special. Cooperation makes scaling and new ideas possible. Samsung can make steady money even when phone sales go up and down because it sells parts to Apple and promotes Google's services. Apple is able to keep product quality high and customer happiness high by using Samsung displays and Google Search. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden truths behind the world's biggest tech battles, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. There's so much more beneath the surface.